Hi guys, today we're going to read the story of Cinderella. This is also a fairy tale, so it is a make-believe story that has been told for many years. Many of you probably have heard or saw the movie Cinderella, so many of you probably know this story. This is very similar to Ye Shen, so I want you to look for similarities and I want you to look for differences too. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Cinderella. Cinderella was smart, kind, and beautiful. Her father loved her very much, and she loved him. Cinderella had a stepmother and two stepsisters too. They did not love Cinderella. They were jealous of her and were never kind. So far we've learned that her stepsisters are mean to her and not kind, whereas Cinderella is smart, kind, and beautiful. Cinderella had to do all the chores. She mopped the floors and washed all the dirty dishes. She dusted, scrubbed, and polished every single thing in the house. One day, Cinderella's family received an invitation to a ball. The prince was having a dance and inviting all of the young women in the kingdom. Cinderella ironed her stepsisters' dresses. She brushed their hair and fixed their bows. Then she waved goodbye as they skipped off to the ball. Cinderella was not allowed to go. After everyone left the house, Cinderella sat alone by the fireplace and cried. Tears streamed down her beautiful face. "Oh, how I wish I could go to the ball," Cinderella sobbed. "I wish that I had a beautiful dress to wear." So far, a similarity is that Cinderella isn't allowed to go to this fancy event, like Ye Shen was not allowed to go to the festival. Cinderella was not allowed to go to the ball. A difference that I've noticed, though, so far is that this said that she had two stepsisters, whereas Ye Shen just had one stepsister. Just then, a tiny woman with wings flew through the window. She had a wand in her hand. It was Cinderella's fairy godmother. "Why are you crying, my dear?" the fairy godmother asked Cinderella. "I want to go to the ball too," cried Cinderella. "Then you shall go," said the godmother. Cinderella's fairy godmother waved her wand quickly in the air. Poof! A pumpkin transformed into a golden coach. 6 mice turned into a team of horses to pull the coach. Whoosh! Cinderella's old, worn-out clothes were changed into beautiful pink and silver gown and the 2 glass slippers. So far we know it's a fairy tale because there is a fairy godmother. Fairy godmothers obviously are not real, and they're in make-believe stories and usually in fairy tales. "What are you waiting for?" the fairy godmother asked Cinderella. "You need to get to the ball. Just make sure that you come home by midnight." The prince saw Cinderella as soon as she entered the ballroom. He could not believe his eyes. She was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. The prince asked Cinderella to dance. The prince soon discovered that Cinderella was smart and kind, and he fell completely in love with her. Cinderella learned that the prince was good and noble. Cinderella fell in love with him too. Soon enough, the clock began to strike midnight in the ballroom. Cinderella gasped and turned to race out of the castle. As she ran out, one of her glass slippers fell off her foot. Cinderella did not stop to get it. The prince rushed after Cinderella, but he couldn't catch her. He picked up the glass slipper and sighed. It belonged on the foot of the girl he loved. He vowed to find Cinderella and marry her. The prince was true to his word. With the glass slipper in hand, he knocked on every door in the kingdom. He was looking for the girl whose foot would fit into the slipper. Every girl wished the slipper would fit, especially Cinderella's stepsisters. The stepsisters tugged and pulled on the slipper. They pushed with all their might, but they could not fit their big feet into the slipper. Cinderella watched her stepsisters as she stood next to the fireplace. At last, she stepped out so the prince could see her. "May I try?" she asked shyly. The prince knelt down in front of Cinderella and held out the glass slipper. Cinderella placed her foot into the slipper, and it fit perfectly. However, the prince did not need to see that. He looked into Cinderella's eyes. He knew that she was his true love. The prince took Cinderella back to his castle, and they were married the next day. Then Cinderella, who was always kind, invited her father, her stepmother, and her stepsisters to live with the prince in her castle. They all lived happily ever after. So what lesson do you think that we can learn from the way this fairy tale ends? Well, very similar to Ye Shen, people who are good and kind will be rewarded. Now, I do see a difference between Cinderella and Ye Shen. In Ye Shen, the stepsister and the stepmother are banned from the castle and have to go live in the cave for the rest of their lives. Whereas here, Cinderella invites the stepmother and her stepsisters to live with her in the castle. So I think that also proves how kind she was as a person.